Hi guys, welcome back to Read Instead. I'm Jake. Glad to have you here today. A couple days ago I was looking through my comments and somebody had asked me, do you read any sci-fi? Well, let's talk about the Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown. Okay. So I thought it would be appropriate to continue on as I'm just sort of doing random book reviews, except they're not, if you're new to this channel, these book reviews that I'm doing to start this channel off are all of my 5-star reads off of my Goodreads page. 2 out of the 3 of these books in this trilogy I gave 5 stars to. The last book in the series, Morning Star, I gave 4 to, but to be honest with you, as I'm telling you that right now, I can't really think of a reason why I gave it 4 stars instead of 5. I mean, the series, it's all sort of just like one big story and novel, if you will, broken up into 3 entries. The last book, Morning Star, again, I think just reflecting back after I finished it, it became very big and very space opera-esque, if you will. And I suppose I was just more intrigued and I was sort of more pulled in to the story in the earlier entries like Red Rising and Golden Sun, when it really gives you the whole, Pierce Brown lays out the premise of the story, which I think is just genius. One of the coolest premises I've ever sort of come across. I don't know if you guys, how many people have seen the movie The Matrix. I'm guessing probably a lot of you have. It was a pretty big movie that came out in 1999. I remember very vividly at some point when I was watching that movie, probably the first time that I was watching that movie, when Neo, the character in that movie, starts to uncover basically the Matrix, and he gets unplugged and then pulled into the real world and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this concept is it's unbelievable. It's genius. It really is. It's just so far out there, but cool and riveting and entertaining premise. The Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown is just like that. And let me tell you guys about the premise. Okay, so Red Rising, right? What does that mean? We're in first of all, this whole place. The story takes place in this galaxy, this solar system. At this point in time, society has been class divided. Which happens in a lot of societies today. But the difference is with these is the classes are all labeled by color, and then each class really has a specific responsibility that they take on to contribute to society as a whole, all throughout the solar system. And it's very layered in the sense it's like a totem pole. The lower classes, have kind of the crap jobs and the crap responsibilities, and then as you get higher, you have a class, for instance, that would have the responsibility of being, the bureaucrats and the government and the politicians and basically the overseers of society and the decision makers for how society within the galaxy should act and work. So we have our main protagonist, and his name is Darrow, and he's a red. That's what class he's part of. The Reds are the lowest class within society, and they have they're basically slaves to the rest of society, but they don't know it because they basically spend their lives underground within the depths of the planets. And they serve the things that they do. They mine and they basically service everybody that lives on the surface. Darrow has a wife that he's just newly married, and she is it turns out, I'm just giving you the very beginning of Red Rising, the first book in the entry. It turns out that she has been enlightened and awakened to the fact that they're slaves and that there's a whole prosperous society that lives above them, and they're slaves to that society. And basically she joins almost like the societies above would call it like a terrorist cell, but she just becomes enlightened and she forms a resistance, and she wants to make headway and make some sort of change, and she becomes very passionate about this. Darrow doesn't even know this until his wife just kind of, spills it all out on him, that she's been sort of living this double life as a resistance, a person who's a member of the resistance. Well, right in the beginning of this book, Darrow's wife is, the intelligence agencies above find out that she is a part of this resistance, and they charge her with treason and rebellion, whatever the charge is, and she ends up being put to death. And this sparks a seed inside Darrow's heart that is the seed that grows through the whole series. Through the death of his wife, and also his wife's wishes, basically, because she wanted to see a societal change, and she knew that the injustices that were happening to the Reds, that class of people, he used this as a spark to sort of become the man who he would ultimately become. So I don't want to give too much more away, but what happens is Darrow basically goes into spy mode, and he becomes, through certain means, a higher up class. He takes on the form of a gold, which is like the highest class. I'm not gonna. The way in which he does that is like pretty cool. And again, I'm just giving you the first, little bit of the first book in the series here. There's so much more to the plot that I don't want to give away. But that's kind of what the premise of this whole series is. And another really cool thing is the combat that takes place all throughout the series. Again, going back to the Matrix, if you guys remember, Kung Fu and martial arts really took... that's one of the aspects that made that movie so cool. Well, in this series and in this time and the technology that's been developed and whatnot, they've basically they have a lot of resistance. You would think in a futuristic society like this would just be really big weapons and weapons that fire, like guns and stuff like that, but they've actually come up with a lot of defense mechanisms where shooting certain weapons is really not the most efficient and best way to kill your enemy, so they do it with swords and knives and different kinds of weapons like that. So I just always thought that was so cool. You have this science fiction series that's set way into the future, but technology has developed in the sense that you're not killing someone from sort of a far off place. You have to get up close and intimate and personal. And the sword fights, basically, that you wouldn't think in a science fiction series. Sword fights is like medieval, and maybe in a pirate book or something, a book about a pirate or something. But that's why it's so cool. It's science fiction. The technology is way developed, and the fights that they have and the training that takes place with their certain blades and their swords is just a really cool aspect of the series. The characters within throughout the whole series, there's so many likable ones. There's nothing that I can point out that isn't just awesome and entertaining and intriguing about this series. Pierce Brown writes awesome dialogue, awesome. And then again, the whole, Darrow carries with him this secret for quite a long time that he, he's a Red, and he always has this, he sees the injustices all throughout society. And it's just really, really cool. The second book in this series is extremely riveting. A lot of people... Pierce Brown isn't afraid to kill someone off, if you know what I mean, and it'll leave you heart-wrenched at the end of this second entry. I don't want to give too much more away. This is one of my favorite series of all time, not just science fiction. It's one of my favorite trilogies of books I've ever read. And to be honest with you, some of you might be watching this saying, well, there's more. Pierce Brown has written more books in this same world, in the same universe. I'm very well aware of that, but I'll be honest with you, this trilogy alone is like so precious to me that I don't want this to get I don't want my opinion of it to be changed in any way if I continue to read the books that sort of piggyback off this series, and if I don't like them as much as this, I just don't want my opinion of this series to change. If you guys disagree with me, I know there's very high opinions of those books also, but this trilogy I know for a fact is sort of a standalone trilogy, and it wraps up nicely at the end of the third book. If you guys disagree with me and you think that I should continue on with the other books that Pierce Brown has written within this same world, let me know. Maybe I'll be encouraged enough to do it. But one more thing I'd like to say, I feel like science fiction is one of those genres that can be a little sort of intimidating or off-putting to people. You really got to sort of get out of reality, and you have to escape to, most of the time, outer space. But the same sort of themes. To me, themes are they run congruently throughout different genres of fiction. Things like romance, things like betrayal, things like political politics and political backstabbing, and injustices, and there's so many, those things can cross genres, and a lot of those same sort of themes that I just mentioned we find in this series. So if you guys have never read any science fiction, I would highly encourage you to start with Red Rising here. I have a feeling you'll like it. I certainly did. One more thing I want to mention to you guys, what I'm reading right now. What I'm reading right now is a few videos ago, I made a video on The Power of the Dog by Dawn Winslow, and I believe I mentioned in that video that I was going to read the second book in that trilogy. It's called the Border Trilogy. So right now I'm reading The Cartel by Dawn Winslow. I hope guys are picking that up okay. Yeah, there we go. The Cartel by Dawn Winslow. And it put me right back in that world of, The Power of the Dog, and the same, some of the same characters. Obviously not the ones who died in the first book, but the same characters. It's the same story that just continues on in a different further along in the timeline. So that's what I'm reading right now. I'd love to hear what you guys are reading, what you plan on reading in the weeks ahead. But the Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown, just a dynamite science fiction trilogy. I'd love for you guys to check it out. Take care.